this the end of the last Sabbath sabbatical and the beginning of the new sabbatical, which we're going into the book of Numbers, or what we will also call appropriately the Ethiopic Numbers. Ethiopic Numbers, interesting. Ethiopic Numbers, Ethiopic Exodus. In other words, approaching Exodus from the Ethiopic or Ethiopian perspective, almost like what Marcus Garvey had said, that as every race looks at it from their own spectacles, that we have to look at the Bible also from a black or Ethiopian, from a Negro or black or Ethiopian spectacles. In other words, through a certain perspective that is indigenous and germane and relative, or relevant and relative to ourselves. So we're about to approach the Ethiopic numbers coming up in the next Sabbath, the next sabbatical period, or the next sabbatical portion. But one thing that I noticed that was interesting about the actual content of the last chapter 27, Leviticus chapter 27, and Numbers chapter 1, or was Midbar Bedar, or in the Hebrew is Bed Midbar. You can see how this is so similar. Bed Midbar in the Hebrew and Bed Bedar. You understand? Speaking about the wilderness. Bed Midbar in the wilderness. Bed Bedar in the wilderness. You understand? In the wilderness of Sinai, because what we have is the emphasis now is on the wilderness experience. And this, as well as other revelations after the setting up of the Dinquan, or the tabernacle, took place there. Whereas the revelations that came previous that we touched on with Moses, were on Mount Sinai, or Har, or Bet Terara, Besina Terara, or Be Har, on the mountain of Sinai. Now what's interesting is that if you go back to Leviticus chapter 26, it speaks about and the Lord spake to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them. In other words, Amar, Bile, Negaracho. In other words, clearly utter, express it in words, express it in these words. And here is defined the vow in explicit and specific terms. Now, we're not talking about the vow of a Nazarite just yet, but in this coming up period, we are going to be crossing over and touching on the vow of a Nazarite. And the reason why I just even briefly touch on this, or focus on this, is because of the application that we can learn from this as we seek to organize ourselves and come together. You understand? Which is the desire of a lot of us who are hearing the message, and many who are hearing the message are desire to either meet and greet, and to, I guess, seeing is believing. They really don't believe that these messages are coming from a real person, or coming from even a small group of people who are putting this out. But we still have nothing. We have not set up the tabernacle. You understand? In truth, in spirit, we're setting it up. You understand? In the spirit of Jah, you understand, in his word, and in the spirit of it, getting this into our heads and heart, not being conformed to the world, being transformed by the renewing of our mind. So that which takes place in the mind is spiritual. You understand? You don't put a book in your mind, but you take the ideas, you understand, and in a sense, just like you take a piece of paper and you burn a piece of paper, and if you burn a piece of paper, it becomes, the smoke goes into the air. Part of that essence of that paper becomes spiritual. So in a similar sense, we take the essence from the words, you understand, and seek to understand them. When we understand ideas, the ideas become spiritual. Now we have to get to the true part, or the reality part, the actual on the ground part, you understand, and establish it. But we cannot do that if we don't have any order. So when we touched on ShirAtu, beShirAtu. ShirAtu, as we say, statute, is ordinance, but in the modern usage of that word ShirAtu, the modern digital computer age that we use that particular terminology from an Ethiopian perspective, that word means system. Just like when you say your systems, like, oh, the system on your computer, it's your system. You understand? So ShirAtu also means the system. So when we say that ShirAtu is the order, you understand, God's order or ordinance, you understand, or his statutes. We can now update this and understand it more applicable for this particular, you could say, digital generation as system, in the same sense that you deal with computers or computerized electronic technology, and you understand the role of a system. Now, if your system on your computer is not working, or if your system has a virus, or if your computer is not going to be functioning, you're not going to be able to do what? Functions. So people say, well, when's the next function for Lion of Judah Society? When are you going to have the next function? You understand? Well, there's a system error. We have system error. You understand? And the system error is that we don't know what his system is. You understand? And if we do know, we are not applying this system individually to our heads and hearts and to our walk, and then therefore this prevents us from coming together and applying this collectively, and therefore having function, therefore having activity, therefore utilizing, you understand, the whole utility, you know, like on your computer there's utilities, you know, there's tools, there are programs, you understand, but all of these things on the computer in the digital world, you understand, cannot function if there's a system error. You see what I'm saying? If there's a system error, these particular features, don't function. You cannot access them, you cannot utilize them, you cannot do nothing. You know, it's almost like if you're on the computer and you got wireless connection, it says but you can't go nowhere. Something's not working right with the system. Could be an error, could be a virus, could be something that's not clicked, could be that something's not checked. You have to go check something off, or you might have to go and uncheck something. You have to find out where you have to uncheck something, and sometimes it's been as easy as that. You uncheck something and now everything is working fine, and you're amazed. You're like, how? Wow, that one thing, I just went there and I checked this or unchecked it, and now everything is working is working fine. Or you might have to reinstall, right? Sometimes you have to reinstall the software. Sometimes you have to reinstall the program. Sometimes you have to reboot the drive or reinstall the system. You understand? The system has to, so you go back to what the master disk. You understand? You go back to the master disk where everything is packed in. This is like the Metav Kedus. This is like the Holy Scripture. In the Holy Scripture is just like that computer system disk. Everything is compressed, right? And then you have to run the program. And when you run the program, everything has to now unpack. Everything has to download and unpack, and so from sometimes it takes a while. You understand? If you're renewing or redoing your system, it's not always a snap of a finger, but it takes a little bit longer. You understand? So you have to be patient. Even the computer menu tell you, be patient while processing program. Be patient. You understand? So you can't say, oh man, I'm tired of this, and then shut down the machine. Because when you do that, you still are not going to be able to do anything. You're going to have to go right back to the very start again. You understand? You got to reinstall it, and you got to be patient. You understand? You got to wait for what? The prompts. You got to wait to be prompted. You can't say, well, how come, well, what can I do? Even if you want to do something, logically, you're going to have to wait until you get the proper prompt, the proper menus come up. You click on that. You understand? And then you have to wait for the next, the next menus, the next prompt. In other words, you have to be patient, go through the process. You have to go through whatever the procedures, whatever the protocols. You can't get around that. You understand? You may want it faster, you understand, but it's not going to be faster, you understand, than what you want it to be, because you want it to be. You're going to have to be patient. So I'm explaining all of that because I think it's important when we talk about the ShirAtu, we talk about the system. You understand, when we talk about what is the order of what we are dealing with, and understanding it in an applicable way. I hope that just some of the rough examples I've given can perhaps help someone understand what the order of business really is. When we talk about, well, I and I coming together, I and I gathering, I and I doing certain things. The first things first, we have to install the system. We have to make sure that the system is upgraded. In other words, to be able to take this Metaf Kedus, take the Bible, take what's in the scriptures, and understand how, whether or not, and how they may apply to today, how they may apply to our current, to our present time. And as I'm preparing for the 34th degree, you understand? In other words, numbers, which is the Bet Midre Bedah or Bet Midbar. And as we go from Leviticus 26, the last portion of Leviticus, and we get into Numbers chapter 1, there's a very interesting matter that is footnoted here that I would like to share with those who are willing to understand, because there's a relevancy to discipleship when we talk about discipleship. In fact, when one said, yes, I want to become a disciple and I want to learn more of this, well, the start is keeping the Sabbath. The beginning point is if you can't keep the Sabbath, you're not going to really learn anything. You're not going to learn it in order. Just like a computer that's working, but it's not working efficiently. Sometimes it has glitches. Sometimes it freezes up on you. Sometimes it shuts down. It might do a little something, but you can't tell when it's going to freeze up on you. You can't tell when it's going to shut down. Or even sometimes if your computer has so many errors, it tells you that it doesn't have a functionality. It lacks a functionality. You can't do certain functions because you're missing something. You're missing this. You're missing that. Now, if this happens on our computers and on our digital technology, since the computer itself was created based on the human being, because the original computer was a man, or a woman if you please, but was a man who computates, a man who counts, a man who's accountable, one who's able to calculate and computate. That's what computer originally was, not this box or this digital device that we have. You understand? The computer originally was the human being. And more specifically was the human, like you could say, brain, and the human mind was the original computer. And the computer was made in that very same way. So the computer was a way of understanding the technology of God's creation and borrowing or taking from that. You understand? And making it just like the motor in cars, the combustion engine. The combustion engine was made based on the human body, as they understood how the human body operate with the lungs and the heart and the blood. You understand? It's the same thing with your cars. You have your engine, you have your starter, you have your alternator, you have the oil, you have the gas. You understand? The oil and the gas is two different, even though it's derived from the same substance. It's derived from the same essence. You understand? The petroleum, but yet it's refined in different ways because it's refined for different purposes and it's refined for different usages. Now, this area of scripture, and when I was going over it in preparation, I saw this part about valuation. This part about valuation. This is where Leviticus 26, this is Leviticus 26, Leviticus 1, the Bet Midbar. So it's on, at one hand, the Bet ShirAtu or ShirAtu. You understand? ShirAtu, in my system. That's what Bet ShirAtu would mean. In my system, or in my order, in my ordinance, in my statutes. These are kind of the old King James, 17th, 18th century, 19th century words. Now we're in the digital age, and in the digital age, we need to understand the interpretation of the Amharic Torah, of the Metaf Kedus. We need to understand it as it applies and it's applicable. You understand? To the present. Present dispensation, the word I was looking for, dispensation that we are in. So here it basically let me just read a part of this where it says, when a man, verse verse 2, when a man shall clearly utter a vow of persons to the Lord, according to thy valuation, then thy valuation shall be for the male from 20 years old even to 60 years old. Even thy valuation shall be 50 shekels of silver after the shekel of the sanctuary. And verse 4, if it be a female, then thy valuation shall be 30 shekels. And if it be from 5 years old even to 20 years old, then thy valuation shall be for the male 20 shekels, and for the female 10 shekels. And verse 6, if it be from a month old even to 5 years old, then thy valuation shall be for the male 5 shekels of silver, and for the female thy valuation shall be 3 shekels of silver. And verse 7, if it be from 60 years old and upward, if it be a male, then thy valuation shall be 15 shekels, and for the female 10 shekels. Verse 8, but if he be too poor for thy valuation, then he shall be set before the priest, and the priest shall value him according to the means of him that vowed, shall the priest value him. Now this is Leviticus chapter 26, the first 8 verses. Now, the question is, what does this all mean? I mean, we have to ask this question. Well, what does this all mean? The first 8 verses, the first 8 verses of chapter 26 of Leviticus. Because if you don't understand that, then Numbers 1 and the whole purpose of the book of Numbers, or Orit Zechulk, is not going to be properly understood. So we have these particular 8 verses. Egziabihir Musain and Dih below Tanagaro, Le Israel Lejoch and Dih Bele Nigaracho. Manacho Wemaso, so when Le Egziabihir Li Set Bisal Ante in the mita gamto metena sileso waga wena yist le wenda kahaya ameta jamro iska sitsa ameta deresa inda mekadasua sekela mizana gimtua amsa yebura sekela yuhun Seitima bitohona gimtua salasa sekela yuhun Ka'amista ametima jamro wiska haya ameta deresa gimtu le wenda haya sekel le seitem aser sekel yuhun le ka'and werima iska mista ameta deresa le wenda gimtu mista yebura sekel le seitem gimtua sosta yebura sekel yuhun kasitsa ametima jamroa kaziyama belaya wenda bihon gimtu asara mista sekel le seitima asara sekel yuhun le gimtuma kamiya kafla wena biyat agin be kahinu afita yukum Kahinuma yete salawina sowa yegamato. Kahinuma yete salo so and michila metena yegemto. Yegemto. In other words, estimate him, value him. But now, what does all this mean? Now, check out how this is so important. And I'm learning from this. This is why I make this, make this message right here to share this. So when we talking about discipleship, how we're getting this together, how we're coming together. Remember, first is in spirit, then in truth. First we have to understand spiritually, in essence, what it's about in order to be able to actualize it. That's what it means by in spirit. You understand? The spiritual part is first. The thought is first. Is the transforming and the renewing of our mind comes first. You understand? And then it comes to actuality, actually do. And first you have to learn it in order to do it. It's the simplex of it right here. Now when it says according to thy valuation in verse 2, according to thy valuation in verse 2. Now in the King James Version it says estimation. King James says estimation. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man shall make a singular vow, the person shall be for the Lord by thy estimation. La Israel lijoch and dih belen nigaracho manachuim. So when le gziabi li set bisal ante in the mita gemto met ena silaso wagawina yist or yist, right? According to that valuation, according to that estimation. Now listen to this right here. Now the verb means, first of all, to separate he who makes the vow, talking about vowing. The verb means, the idea is to separate. He who makes the vow states clearly how much he vows and under what conditions. That's what's called contract. That's what's called covenant. You understand? States what is vowed, how much he vows, and under what are the conditions of the vow. Like, what are the conditions of the agreement? Like, how does the relationship begin? And this is telling us how this relationship now, after some of the basic instructions in the Belui Kidan, the Old Testament, how it's really beginning. Now, here it says, according to that valuation, or in the King James, according to that estimation. It is customary for a man to vow that if God, if Yahweh, if the Most High grants him his request, he will devote to the Mekdes, to the holy place, or in later times to the temple, the Beta Mekdes, the valuation or the estimation of his life, or of his child, or of cattle. Now the word in the Hebrew for valuation, or urkaka, is explained in two ways. Either the final letter is an addition, or it signifies thy, referring to the priest. Now, when we look at the Amharic, what they are focusing on in this part is the in the mitagemto, in the mitagemto meten, according to your in modern Amharic they would say guess. People say according to your guess. It means more than guess, but for operative use right now, in order for us to operate, remember system, operations, think about the digital technology and understand the Metaf Kedus digitally, and we can do this. In verse 3 it says, Lewen kahaya almeta jamro iskasitsa almeta deres and the mekadesua sekela mizan gimtu amsa yabur sekela yuhun, and thy estimation. And thy estimation, it says, shall be of, or and really the estimation, gemtu. Now as a noun, not as a verb. In the mita gemto, meten is the verb, according to the amount, or according to the amount of your estimation, valuation, or guess. Here is gemtu, thy estimation, thy valuation shall be of the male from 20 years, 20 years old, even to 60 years old. Now, why is Yahweh saying from 20 years to 60 years? Even thy estimation, valuation shall be 50 shekels of silver after the shekel of the sanctuary. Now, here in the Chomesh, you understand, of the Jews, which is the synagogue Torah, you understand, which we also use as a companion study. Here it has in the footnote down here, it says thy valuation, or the valuation. Listen to the notes that they give here. This is how the Jews, so-called white Jews, study. It says not the market price. It's not, when we talk about value of silver, we are not talking about the market price, not the market price, which varies, but the value attached to the age group is one understanding of it. It's not according to the market price. Now, how do we understand this? In other words, when we talk about 50 shekels of silver, what is a shekel, first of all, as a weight? You understand? And in the Metaf Kedus of Negus and Neges, he gives us, and I wondered why he had this terek alat, like some raw words. There were raw words, a set of raw words that were put in His Majesty's Metaf Kedus, where he felt it to be important and necessary to explain some of these raw words from the Belui Kidan, or from the Old Testament time. And on this page right here, it actually has, I think it has a Shekel, Shekel right here. This is from Kalelo Chilisanat Yetawesadu Yebelu Kidan Terek Alat Meglecha. Here it says Shekel, it says Yekubdet Mizan. In other words, it is a heavyweight, right? It's a heavyweight, speaking of like metals and stuff like that, not like of liquid, not a liquid weight. Yakubdet mizan asara arat 14 gram yahlno. So Negus and Neges explains that a shekel, you understand, a shekel or a shekel for us is 14 grams. Is about 14 grams. So when it says 50 shekels of silver, it's 50 times 14 grams to get the estimation. But then it says here, it says after, notice, in the mekadesu sekela mizan, after the measurement or after the weight, you understand, the weighing or the scales, the weighing of the shekel of the sanctuary. So the sanctuary, the Mekdes, the holy place, in other words, Lion of Judah, we have to maintain a certain, for God's sanctuary, we said his name, is where the valuation of how much is a shekel, how much is 50 shekels. Now, according to Negus and Neges, according to the King of Kings, Terek Alat Meglecha, or raw word explication, it says right here, it says Yakubdet Mizan Asararat Gram Yahlno. That is about 14 grams. So we're talking about 14 grams. Notice, 14 grams of silver. 14 grams of silver is 1 shekel. So 50 grams of silver, you understand, or 50 shekels of silver would be 50 times 14 grams. So the first thing we have to do to find out, well, how much is this? Because this is the estimation of those who are vowed or who are under a vow. You understand? This is what vowing is. This is like to say what membership is about. This is what membership is about. And there's an important, applicable reason that I would hope that you would bear with I, you understand, to go through this, because I'm excited about this part here, because this now that we understand basic discipleship and basic coming out of the world and into God's house begins with even certain simple things like the Sabbath. Because if you don't keep the Sabbath, you don't have an opportunity to study and to grow, really. You understand? You're just picking up here and there. It's like eating on the run. You're not sitting down and having a good meal. You understand? The Sabbath is to sit down in essence and have a good meal spiritually. It says from 20 to 60 years old. The footnote says from the age he is liable to military service until he reaches old age. This is why the age from 20 to 60. So if we are within this age, we are supposed to be considering, you understand, being of the military service for the King of Kings and his Christ, between 20 to 60 years of age. Between 20 to 60 years of age. It's very interesting, because we're going to actually get, just to try to figure out, well, how much is 50 shekels? Because at 14 grams of silver, what is it? Just say if 14 grams is $100. You understand? Or say if 14 grams was $50. You understand? Then 50 times 50 is what? What would that be? You know what I'm saying? What would that be? $2,500? That would be about $2,500. Understand? I mean, when we want to talk about membership, we talk about membership. You understand? It's not pay $5, $10. No, this is what membership is about. This explains God's order of membership. You know what I'm saying? Some of y'all spend more money on DJ sound equipment or computers or whatever else one is into. Spend more money on records and stuff like that, or going out to session or on gal. You spend that money, you spend $2,500, if that, just to give an idea. But it's in those ranges to understand that when it says 50 shekels of silver, the valuation in that time, if we were to apply it to this time, you understand, would be like, you could say the down payment, you understand, the down payment in a sense on a car, or even like a life insurance policy. Basically, it's like a life insurance policy, because when one vows, you understand, when one is under a vow to Yahweh, that's exactly what it is. We are saying that I am giving my life for his service. If I need to be called on to do his service, just like in the military, I'm going to drop everything else that I'm doing, you understand, and I'm going to get to that. You understand? Because I'm in a covenant. You understand? I'm in an agreement. It's about honor. I would dishonor myself. I would dishonor my family, spiritually, especially speaking. I would dishonor everything that I say and claim to believe in. So it's important for us to understand God's system, especially according to the so-called estimation or valuation that's given here. So the ages from 20 to 60 years old is the liability to military service until one reaches old age. Now, let's explain this. There's two types of persons in God, Yahweh's, and Jah Rastafari's true community. When we talk about the Rastafari and the Beta Israel true community, there's two types of individuals. There are Salamawi, to say civilians, and there are Watadarawi. You understand? And there are military. There are soldiers, what we would call warrior. When you hear Rastafari talk about I as a warrior, well, actually, it's to be a soldier, but the idea can be connected. You understand? When one would say them a warrior. But here is the order. Here is the system. Here's where progress. Here's where growth. Here's where sustainability. Here's where development begins. By first of all understanding what is the logic, the logistics of this, and then putting the tactics, following the tactics out to achieve the strategic goals. See, the strategic goal is to come out of Babylon. That's the goal, to come out of Babylon and to enter into our promised land and inheritance and blessing, and fulfill therefore the will of God in Christ. That is the strategic goal. But we need, first of all, the logistics. So at this level that we're teaching and studying, and the sabbatical teaching and the Bible studies and discipleship is all vis-a-vis logistics. In order for us to develop the right tactics to achieve the strategy or strategies that are connected with the ultimate great summit. You understand that is destined for those of us who obey and love him and keep his commandment and keep the testimony of Yeshua, Adonenu, of Getachin Jesus Christos. So here it's stating to us that from 20 to 60 years old is the age that all the males, right? All the males, because this part is the estimation of the male, le wend for the male, ka haya amet, from 20-year Jemro, starting from 20-year Iska until Sitsa, until 60 Amet Deres, reaching to 60, the 60-year, in the Mekdesu Sek El Mizan, according or as the holy place, the Mekdesu, his holy place, Sek El Shekel Mizan, the weight of the shekel. Now we know that a shekel, according to Negus Neges, the King of Kings, is Asara Arat Gram Yahlno. That, you understand, that's a so-called dry weight, or it's a metal weight, it's a heavy weight, and it's equivalent to 24 grams. You understand? It says Gimtu, his estimation or valuation, Amsa Yebur Sek El Yehun. His estimation now is 50 shekels of silver. 50 shekels. So now if a shekel is 14 grams, then go figure 50 shekels. You understand what 50 shekels according to Inda Mekdesu Sekel Mizan. Now, as we move forward, let us notice something right here. As we move forward, and it says this right here. It says, and if it be a female, If it is a female, then that valuation shall be 30 shekels. You understand? The valuation shall be 30 shekels. Now, there's no footnote right there, but it's known that sisters also, you understand, that the daughters, the sisters, you understand, especially the daughters and sisters, before they are mothers and wives, are also eligible for soldiery, and even when they do become mothers and wives, if they are willing, you understand, but it's a requirement that the church be the true Mekdes, be militant in order to be triumphant, because we have to get up and stand up for our right, and this is the order right here from Torah, the Amharic Torah, and the teaching of the King of Kings. Now, verse 5 says this right here. Let's go to verse 5. Verse 5 says, and if it be from 5 years old even to 20 years old, then thy estimation valuation shall be of the male 20 shekels, and for the female 10 shekels. Now people say, well, why is it different? Why is it different for the male than for the female, than for the one who's below that particular age? Now, from 5 years old, not that a youth or a young child of that age can make a vow of this kind, but such is the valuation or estimation if an adult stipulates to pay it. You understand? If the adult stipulates to pay that. You know, when people say, yes, I gave my child to the Lord. You know, you hear that often. I vowed my child to the Lord. Well, there is a real on the ground reality that accompanies this, especially when we are living communally or in community. Now, it says in verse 6, and if it be from a month old even to 5 years old, then thy estimation shall be of the male 5 shekels of silver, and for the female thy estimation of valuation shall be 3 shekels of silver. Speaking about if it's a month, if the child or that which is vowed is a month old even to 5 years old. Remember, the basic context of this in the community is that the vow, meaning to separate, he who makes a vow clearly states clearly how much he vows and under what conditions. It is customary, you understand, that for a man to vow, that if Elohim, if Yahweh grants him his request, you know what I mean? If Yahweh grants him his request, you understand? Then I will give this, I will do that. You understand? It's, in other words, it's backing up your word. You understand? Because what we have a lot going on among a lot of us out here in the wilderness is a lot of people giving their word, but they're never following up on their word. And then if their word don't come true, or if they don't give their word in true faith, you understand that there is no real judgment for that. So what happens eventually is that we distrust each other. This is where a lot of the court cases that we see on TV now, that ones have to go to court, you understand, to resolve something, sometimes even in the family, that ones cannot, are not even spiritually mature enough to work out they're lawless. You have to understand they're lawless. They are operating in their churches and counterfeit Christianities, spiritually speaking, illegally. They are operating illegal Jehovah worships. They're operating illegal Christian so-called churches, because they're not in the true law of Christ, because Christ says you do err not knowing the scriptures or the power of God. Now, verse 7 is a very interesting one, where it says, and if it be from 60 years old and above, if it be a male, then thy estimation shall be 15 shekels, and for the female 10 shekels. Now, what does all of this mean? What does all of this mean? You understand? From 60 years old. Let us just pause for a brief moment, and we're going to return and touch on this, all right?